Hello everyone, with Jamaica here. Welcome to this updated video on the weather across Jamaica and the Caribbean. It is Friday evening, May 5, 2023. Now before we jump into it, please ensure that you guys like the video, share it, subscribe and tap the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I post a brand new video. Also, feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section letting me know what the weather has been like in your area recently. Also, feel free to ask any weather related question that you might have about the future of the weather in your specific area. I respond to all comments and I really live for this stuff. Alright, so taking a look at the surface map of the Atlantic for this evening, we can see that we have a cold front that stretches all the way from northern section of North Atlantic all the way down to the north of Hispaniola. And we can see that the entire Atlantic basin is being dominated by a ridge of high pressure that's sending some amount of easterly trade winds across the main development region into the Caribbean. Taking a look at the visible satellite images of the Atlantic before the sun went down, we can see the clouds associated with that cold front right there across the northern sections of North Atlantic, and we can also see a lot of clouds being pushed from east to west in that easterly trade wind brought about by that high pressure ridge, not to mention some spots of blues right there across the main development region that's associated with the Saharan dust. Yes, there's a lot of Sahara dust moving across the basin at this time. We'll be talking more about that later on. Let's focus our attention on the prediction that was made in yesterday's post on our Twitter page about Friday's weather. It was stated that on Friday afternoon we would have received some amount of rainfall across sections of some central and western parishes in Jamaica. Central parishes refer to those parishes in the county of Middlesex, St. Anne, St. Mary, St. Catherine, Clarendon, Manchester, while western parishes refer to those parishes in the county of Cornwall, so Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth. And what ended up happening? A post was made at 4:31 p.m. highlighting some amount of clouds bring overcast skies and rainfall to sections of central and western parishes. So there was more bias for these clouds across sections of some southern parishes, but they are indeed in central and western Jamaica, so it did indeed happen. So we can see some amount of overcast skies right there across northern section of St. Catherine, maybe northern section of St. Andrew. We can also see a lot of clouds right there across portions of St. Elizabeth and Manchester, not to mention sections of Westmoreland. It was more in the way of overcast skies, however, than rainfall. Majority of the rainfall took place across sections of St. Elizabeth, and we also saw some amount of lightning flashes in there. We can see by those sparkling white dots, not to mention the colors that represent high cold cloud tops across sections of St. Elizabeth. So they indeed get in on some amount of isolated thunderstorms this afternoon into the evening hours. Taking a look at the Doppler radar images to confirm the rainfall across sections of St. Elizabeth, we can see that we have that green and that yellow that represent moderate to heavy rainfall coming off the coast of St. Elizabeth right there. So that indeed confirms the rainfall. Even although we see a lot of colors across sections of Jamaica, there's no rainfall happening right now. That is what we refer to as ground cluttering. So the greens and the yellows that we actually see moving in a westward fashion, that is what we refer to as the actual rainfall. And if we can match up what we see on the satellite images to the Doppler radar images, that's how we know that yes, it's actually raining as well. Taking a look at temperatures for tonight, we can see that we have 28 degrees Celsius in Kingston, 27 degrees Celsius in Montego Bay, and as usual these temperatures should be getting lower as the night progresses. Taking a look at the temperatures for tomorrow, we can see that 18Z or 1 p.m. on Saturday on both the Euro and the GFS models are showing that Jamaica is embedded in some amount of yellows into some amount of orange shadings that represent 1 to even 3 degrees Celsius above average. And what are the average temperatures for the month of May in Jamaica? 89 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's the equivalent of about 32 degrees Celsius. And if we're going to be getting 1 to 2 degrees or 3 degrees Celsius above average temperatures for tomorrow, it should be anywhere from, let's say, 32 to 35 degrees Celsius at most. Taking a look at the dry air map, we can see that we have a lot of dry air stretching all the way from Africa into the Caribbean as indicated by all of those oranges and red shadings. Jamaica is embedded in some amount of yellows, gold and orange shadings at this time. Taking a look at the Saharan dust map for 2 p.m. on Saturday, we can see that we have some amount of haze that's represented by all of that brown Even although we have the most intense browns right there across the main development region and Africa, we see some of that getting into the Caribbean. So try to take necessary precautions so that you're not that drastically affected. We do indeed have some amount of hazy weather to experience tomorrow, but it won't be as robust as one would expect, as it's not that time of year as yet. Taking a look at the wave forecast for tomorrow, we can see that we have a lot of blues as indicated by both the Euro and the GFS, and the blues on the key represent 1.5 meter wave height or less, and the waves are going to be that low considering the winds that we'll be getting tomorrow. We can see the greens that represent the winds coming in from the east, that represent anywhere from, let's say, 15 to 20 knot winds. But where does all of that air pile up? Where do we have the least amount of winds across the island? We can see the least amount of winds represented by the blue shadings, just like what we see on the key. The blues represent the least amount of winds, and usually wherever we receive that least amount of winds across the island, that's where we have that buildup of cloud and afternoon convection in the afternoon hours. So we can see some amount of blues across sections of some central and western parishes. So we might have something similar to what happened today, with more of a bias across sections of some southern parishes in Jamaica. So we shall see exactly what unfolds. And if we actually take a look at the upper level support, we can see that the wind shear is going to be coming in from the west, slightly from the north. So it's a kind of like west to west southwesterly fashion. So there might be some amount of favorability for the south coast, just like what we had today, with more of the cloud cover and afternoon convection taking place across the southern parishes in Jamaica. Taking a look at the actual precipitation forecast by both the Euro and the GFS models, this map is showing 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is actually 10 a.m. Jamaica time. We can see that we have some blues. Where do we have the consensus? We see a lot of blues on the Euro model. But what about the GFS model? We see the blues across eastern Jamaica. So that is where we have the agreement. That's where we have the consensus. So the chances are high that we'll be receiving some amount of rainfall at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, actually 10 a.m. Jamaica time, at around that time. So St. Thomas, Portland might get in on some of that rainfall. Skipping ahead to about 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is actually 2 p.m. Jamaica time, we see the blues spreading on both the Euro and the GFS models to central and western Jamaica, with the darkest blues right there across sections of some southern parishes that indicate some amount of rainfall. And I know we sound like a broken record. This has been what the models have been showing for the past couple days, and the rainfall is lacking. We shall see exactly what unfolds with this one. This one is going to be interesting to watch, to see exactly what unfolds tomorrow. But we're definitely going to be getting in on some amount of rainfall somewhere across sections of central and western Jamaica, especially southern parishes tomorrow, definitely. And the accumulated precipitation forecast maps confirm this rainfall. We can see that both maps are showing all the rainfall that's expected from now up until 10 p.m. on Saturday. We see some amount of consensus on both maps. Look at the area around Kingston and St. Catherine, up to 0.41 of an inch being shown by the Euro model. GFS showing 0.29 of an inch of rainfall. Either way, we do indeed have some amount of consensus with the amount of rainfall. Even portions of central and western Jamaica getting in on some of that as well. And we're not saying that we're going to be having a lot of rainfall from now all the way up to 10 p.m. on Saturday. We're saying that likely that rainfall is showing, the rainfall maps are showing all the rainfall that's going to be expected during the afternoon hours on Saturday. So we definitely have the rainfall totals matching up. There's consensus. We indeed are expecting to get some amount of rainfall for tomorrow, and we're indeed grateful for that, considering that we are finally in the one of the rainiest months of the year, May, and we usually receive up to 213 millimeters of rainfall during this month. So we'll take all the rainfall that we can get to try to put a dent in this drought. Alright, so that's it for the forecast across Jamaica. Let's focus our attention on the rest of the Caribbean. So we can see that we had quite a blow up of convection across portions of Cuba for today. Majority of the Caribbean seems to be in the clear, lots of stable air, putting a lid on the weather at this time. Lots of cloud cover across portions of Colombia as usual in the intertropical convergence zone right there. Some amount of cloud cover and rainfall across portions of the southern United States, not to mention sections of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico as well. Taking a look at the Doppler radar images of the northeastern Caribbean. So these maps are showing all the rainfall that happened across the northeastern Caribbean from about 2:20 p.m. today. So we can see that yes, portions of Puerto Rico, northern Puerto Rico, got in a small amount of rainfall today. Some light to moderate to slightly heavy rainfall across portions of northwestern Puerto Rico. You can see some 1 and 2 scattered passing showers right there across portions of Guadeloupe, maybe Dominica. Not so much in the way of rainfall across portions of Anguilla, but maybe Antigua and Barbuda getting in on some of that rainfall. Taking a look at the Barbados radar, we can see that we have some amount of rainfall right there to the west of Barbados, going into sections of maybe St. Vincent. And that's basically it for the Barbados radar. Not much in the way of rainfall taking place at all. Taking a look at the wider view of Doppler radar images, we can see that for the most part, the most rain that we see is right there across portions of Cuba associated with the afternoon convection that they received today. Taking a look at the temperature forecast for tomorrow, we can see average to slightly below average temperatures across portions of the eastern Caribbean. So anywhere from Guadeloupe southward is what the GFS is showing. The Euro is showing more in the way of warmer than average temperatures across the Leeward Island, but the consensus is right there across anywhere from, let's say, St. Lucia southward on the Euro model. We can also see a lot of above normal temperatures stretching all the way into the central and western Caribbean, not to mention the Gulf of Mexico and the central United States. Taking a look at the Saharan dust map, we can see that yes, we indeed have some amount of slightly hazy weather to receive across portions of the Caribbean for tomorrow, with the most dust across the main development region and Africa. So let's hope it stays that way. Either way, try to take necessary precautions that you're not that drastically affected by the Saharan dust. Taking a look at the wave forecast for tomorrow, we can see a lot of blues across majority of the Atlantic basin, with some amount of purples and reds that indicate 2-meter wave heights or more, and that's usually located wherever we have the strongest winds. And we can see those waves right there to the waters to the east of the United States, the waters to the east of the Caribbean, not to mention the far waters to the south of Hispaniola and Jamaica. And we see consensus on both the Euro and the GFS models. I know that when we have consensus or agreement, the chances of it actually happening are much higher, and that's due to the fact that the strongest winds are going to be in those spots as well. Look at all of those yellows that represent 25 to 30 knot wind, especially right there to the far south of Jamaica, to the north of Colombia and northwestern Venezuela. That is a hot spot for strong wind, and it makes sense that the highest waves will be across those areas as well. Taking a look at the rain forecast for tomorrow, we can see that both maps from the Euro and the GFS are showing all the rainfall that's expected from now up until 10 p.m. on Saturday. So anywhere from now up until then, there's going to be rainfall. Not saying there's going to be rainfall all the way from now up until then, but if it's not already affecting those spots right now, it is going to be affecting those spots up until, or let's say up to 10 p.m. on Saturday. So we see that we have some amount of rainfall to receive across portions of Cuba, portions of Hispaniola, so Haiti, maybe Western Dominican Republic, portion of Jamaica, just like what we stated earlier, portion of northern Puerto Rico. We can see that the eastern Caribbean looks to be in the clear on the Euromal. However, we see some slight greens right there across portions of Dominica, maybe St. Lucia, so they might get in on some slight rainfall. We can see some slight greens across eastern Trinidad, lots of rainfall to the east or the eastern portion of Venezuela, not to mention Guyana getting in on some rainfall as well. Look at Colombia with all of those reds and even purples, up to 3 inches of rainfall being predicted on the GFS. Do we have consensus on the Euromal? Not really, but we do see some amount of rainfall up to 4 of an inch of rainfall there. We do see some rainfall right there across portions of Panama and Costa Rica as well. Taking a look at the western portion of the basin, we see some amount of spotty showers, some amount of convection across portions of eastern and central Mexico. Scrolling down, not much in the way of rainfall across the Yucatan Peninsula or Belize at this time, but we do see a spot of rainfall right there across portions of Venezuela, portions of Guatemala. So maybe the border of Guatemala and Belize might get in on some rainfall. Alright, so that's it for the forecast across the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.